F125 My Team Career Mode for Season 1, round number 12, the Singapore Grand Prix. We start this race weekend in Singapore with a lot of talks. First of all, end game talks with Paul Aaron. This is the final talks we will be having with him. We can actually propose a contract after this now, and he has come down quite a lot. 77% chance to sign, decent salary, no team performance clause anymore, so that is looking better for him, although he does want our car to be 6th best on performance, which, you know, is a little bit ahead of where we are at the moment, but could be possible towards the end of this season. I mean, it depends if we even have any regulations going into next season as well, because I haven't heard anything yet, so we'll see what happens there. Before we get on to any more talks or anything, got some more development and research going on. Lots of different things, quite a few failed upgrades actually, so just, you know, getting through as much as we can there. We'll then go for some durability stuff, so getting some of that stuff going as well. Lots of research, lots of development here, just constantly doing stuff. And I believe we'll be doing, yep, some facility improvements as well. We can now do 2 engineering facility improvements, so we get a couple going on there for some, I believe, expansion of durability and some other stuff going on there. Also personnel facility improvements, getting another one going there as well. Same goes for corporate, going for secondary team sponsor upgrade thing there, so we'll get that going too. Then we have our end game talks with Zach O'Sullivan. He also brings his things down, still wants the car performance to be 6th. However, he has got a considerably lower salary, actually 1.7 compared to, I think it was about 2.2 for Aaron. Then we have Jack Doohan, which I believe this is only, I don't think this is end game talks, I think this is the one before end game, I can't quite remember, but his salary actually not far off Aaron's there, to be honest. So Jack Doohan is potentially looking like a possible driver for next season, because yeah, his kind of, you know, he's not massively needy, I guess, greedy, although saying that, to be fair, his kind of stats I don't think are actually that much higher than like Paul Aaron and O'Sullivan anyway, because, you know, he obviously got kicked out of F1 pretty early on. We then have our next meeting with Esteban Ocon. Now his salary is very high compared to the rest. The others, there are like 2 million, 12.97 million currently for Esteban Ocon. He wants the car performance at 4th as well. Then we have Oliver Behrman, only 4.5 million salary. However, he wants also the car performance rank at 4th. So 61% chance to sign. We'll see how that goes. It did actually, after we had our talk with Ocon, I got a little message saying that other drivers have kind of, it's leaked that we are talking to Esteban Ocon, and that, I think, had a bit of a negative impact on Behrman's thoughts. So that is something I've got to think about for next season. I still do have one more chat left to have with Ocon, and I don't think we're going to sign him. The money's, you know, it's just a bit too high cost for the money, so I don't know if we're going to sign him for next season. I don't think he's going to, you know, want to go to our team anyway, so we might cut ties with him for the next meeting, but we might also just go with it, you know, just to see what happens. Might as well give ourselves as many options as we can, as we actually have a new sponsor coming through. And then we have big news. Yuki Tsunoda is retiring at the end of this season. Our first driver retirement announcement is Yuki Tsunoda, of all people, not the driver I expected. Before Fernando Alonso, before Lewis Hamilton, Yuki Tsunoda is retiring from Formula 1 after 1 season here on F125, and then our car has actually had quite a few upgrades come to it before this weekend. We are now the 7th quickest car on paper. We're now ahead of Haas, Sauber, Alpine and RB, but you can see how close it is. We are right there, both of our cars pretty much at the same spot upgrades wise, but we are a little bit ahead of Haas actually, still a fair way behind Aston Martin and Williams. However, everybody is kind of grouping up a little bit more. It's not kind of one big group at the top and then one group at the bottom. It is now a more kind of, I don't know, there's slightly bigger gaps between some of the teams, but everybody is a little bit closer to everybody, so we'll see how that shapes out at the end of this season. As we get into qualifying here now, at the moment it is dry, however there is rain expected for this weekend. Possibly the first potentially fully wet weekend, like race weekend we have. And there is also rain expected for qualifying. So I got out early on a set of soft compound tyres to just get a lap going, but I have actually gone for a wet setup here, and I don't know how we're going to go in the wet. Last time we had a bit of wet running, it was in Silverstone, and it didn't go very well. However, we did have a dry setup there, so we'll see how this goes with a wet setup. We do manage to get through to Q2. Both drivers get through to Q2 actually. Oscar Piastri, the big surprise, out in Q1. I just don't think he got a lap. He didn't get a good lap time down on his first lap, and then the rain started coming down in Q1. So Piastri is out in Q1 here in Singapore, and we get to Q2. You can see now it is very wet. It is full wet here, and we are on the full wet tires, and we've got a full wet setup on the car. But yeah, I haven't done a lot of wet weather driving in this game, so it is something that I'm having to try and get used to on the fly a little bit here. And it's, you know, Singapore, not the easiest track either, especially to have these conditions with. So yeah, we're just kind of going around as we can here, but unfortunately I do not make it out of Q2, so this is the fastest lap, the fastest qualifying lap I do at this track this weekend. And yeah, we do not make it through to Q3. At the moment, it feels okay. It completely butchered that corner there, went in way too deep, and then lost a lot of time. This is where I seem to lose the most time in these wet conditions. Even in dry, that's a very tricky part of the track. Everywhere else, I wasn't feeling too bad. I think we've got Bortoleto in front of us, because Hulkenberg already out in Q1 in the other Sauber. We've got, I believe, a Williams directly behind us. Not sure which one, because they've both made it through to Q2. But yeah, we were actually sticking with Bortoleto and doing a pretty good job in the first sector. The second sector, we've slowed down a little bit. The third sector, I think we've maybe come back again a little bit, got a bit closer to Bortoleto again. But still not feeling massively happy with this one. As we come around the final corner, we cross the line. We do go quicker than Bortoleto. However, on my next flying lap, I completely butchered it and go smacking into the wall. A little bit of lag there with the contact I made on the wall there. It actually completely destroyed our rear left tyre. So that was my next flying lap. And yeah, the track I think would improve, because I ended up 5.4 seconds off pole, almost 2 seconds behind P15, and Paul Aaron, my teammate, makes it through to Q3. Yes, my AI driver has made it to Q3 for the first time, and we did not make it through. Russell and Tsunoda both out in Q2 as well there, so that's a bit of a shock. But let's see what's in store for this very wet, I assume, Singapore Grand Prix. Let's get going.
Marina Bay hosted a Grand Prix that briefly ran in the 60s and 70s, but the Garden City re-entered the calendar for good in 2008. We missed it for a couple of years, but it was great to come back to the Singapore Grand Prix. And here's the circuit, just under 5 kilometers long and featuring 3 DRS zones, promoting more overtaking. Certainly into turn 14 at the end of the Esplanade Bridge, into turn 16 now. A popular spot there for overtaking. And if you're brave enough, in front of the arena of fans down at turn 1, you can make a move there as well. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Antonelli, Carlos Sainz, and Albon, Fernando Alonso, Gasly, Aaron, and Liam Lawson, Verstappen, Russell, Lance Stroll, and Bortoleto, Tsunoda, Ocon, Isaac Hadjar, and Oscar Piastri, Behrman, Doohan, O'Sullivan, and Nico Hulkenberg rounds off the grid. With preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track. And joining me in the commentary box this afternoon, the First Lady of World Motorsports, Naomi Schiff. Now, we had great fun watching them win last time out. What a great victory it was. But can they carry that into today's race?
Well, they're certainly in a great position. It's always great to just come off of a win. The momentum's there, the team are working well together, and so is the car. So what they've got to do is just keep building on that. Don't change a winning formula. Keep it simple and keep doing what you're doing.
Right, it's time to get underway. We do have a grid penalty again for this race. I forgot to mention, we took the grid penalty last time out for Paul Aaron. Totally forgetting, oh, we might have to do it with O'Sullivan for the next race. That is one downside to driving as two drivers. I think definitely we will drive as only one driver from season 2 onwards. But we get underway here. It's a decent start, already ahead of Jack Doohan. Now we're battling with Oliver Bearman in the Haas. He's had a pretty poor season, actually. After a podium in round 1 Australia, he's only scored one more point since then, and he's not having a very good time of it. To be fair, the Haas has taken a bit of a nosedive, as we are not able to quite get past him. Really laggy replays here, even worse than usual, actually. I think it's because of the rain. It really has a lot of issues with replays, and actually you won't see a lot of replays from my perspective, because it seems to be that from AI drivers, the lag isn't that bad, but if I'm watching a replay of myself, the lag is really bad, and it like goes off sync with like what's happening on track, so really hard to sync it up. So that is quite annoying. But anyway, we continue here in the night sky of Singapore in the rain. Yes, it is wet. We're on intermediates. We're not quite on full wets, as we very nearly go into the back of Bearman there, just getting a little bit caught out. But yeah, up to P20. It is intermediate conditions, not quite full wet conditions. And I mean, it's difficult on this first lap, but I'm feeling decent on the inters, you know. Didn't feel very quick on the wets in qualifying, and I mean, that was definitely, you know, that definitely was shown with the time as we go for a dive up the inside of Bearman into this next right-hander side by side with him, just trying to make up another position on this lap, and sketchily using ERS around that left-hander there on the outside. And that does mean, though, that we get ahead of Bearman and up into P19, so it's 2 positions made from where we started this race in P21. But yeah, I wasn't feeling great in the wets in qualifying. Granted, I didn't get that second lap. We would have definitely gone quicker, because I was about half a second up, maybe even more than that, before I had that incident in qualifying. As we now have a look at Antonelli, who started P4. A lot of grid penalties, by the way. I believe Verstappen got pole because he started P11 with a penalty, so I think he probably got P1 and then got a 10-second penalty, as once again a little bit of lag there. But Antonelli, it ended up being a Ferrari front row lockout with Verstappen's penalty. Leclerc at the front once again. Of course, he won the last race in where was the last race? Was the last race Monza? I think the last race was Monza. He won that race, and Antonelli, who has not yet had a podium, is fighting for a podium right now with Lando Norris, and he gets ahead of Norris. He started behind him. That's now Kimi Antonelli up to P3. Can Antonelli get his first podium here in Singapore? His first podium in Formula 1. Verstappen, though, is going to be trying to make up for the penalty that he was given after getting pole position. He's now battling with Liam Lawson, who, of course, in our universe has not had a Red Bull stint with Verstappen. He started the season at VCARB, and Verstappen does get ahead now up into P9. Now, lap number 4 already, we're getting told to come into the pits because, as you can see, I'm struggling a little bit. The rain is heavier. The rain is getting heavier. I was hoping it would get less, but it's actually getting heavier. And we're coming in for a set of wet compound tyres. So we're going on to full wets for this race. It may be the first time we've done full wets. I believe in Silverstone we only got intermediates. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, we're now onto the full wet compound tyres. Unfortunately, we did have to double stack with our teammate. It's not really cost us much, maybe 1 position. We're down in P19 now. However, a couple of drivers have not pitted yet. They're going on for 1 more lap. I guess they don't want to double stack with their teammates. Oliver Bearman actually being one of those. Although for Williams, it's not good. They had a great qualifying. Both drivers got into Q3, but now Albon has been stuck behind Sainz and now sits there. I mean, you can see the deadness in his eyes in the cockpit. That's rather scary looking. Albon sits there for absolutely ever and comes out in P21 only ahead of Nico Hulkenberg. He went from being in like P6, P7 to P21. That is So unfortunate for Albon. Yeah, Williams will be kicking themselves for that. They really should have just risked it and put him out for another lap, because honestly, I don't think it would have been an issue, because you can't actually tell, but on the minimap there, that grey Haas dot ahead of me on the minimap, 2 cars ahead of me actually, is Oliver Behrman. He's jumped ahead of us with that strategy. So the undercut has actually worked because there were so many people in the pits and you were having to wait for people in the pits. The undercut, or the overcut, sorry, actually seemed to work out, as George Russell is now going to be the first driver to make a proper move on the wet tyres. That is one thing I will say here. Singapore, not the best track for overtaking. However, we do get a few overtakes here on wet compound tyres. Now, as Russell has a big slide right behind my teammate Paul Aaron, he's now going for a move on him. But yeah, we actually see some moves on the wet compound tyres, something we didn't really see with previous games. To be fair, the grid is a little bit all over the place, so he is working his way through much slower cars. But yeah, it is nice to at least see some of the AI actually making moves. For us, unfortunately, we're really struggling. We've lost 2 seconds to Bortoletto ahead, and on the wet compound tyres, we are really struggling. Now, by lap 13, our tyres are pretty much shot, but thankfully we're coming in anyway, and I believe it's going to be for a set of intermediates, because the rain is getting a little bit lighter again. Once again, we're going to have to double stack, and it's even worse. It's a really slow stop, a 5.2 second pit stop, and that's going to put us back behind Alex Albon. We're now P20 once again. This has not been great. We had decent pace on the inters at the start. We then did not have good pace on the wets. We're back on inters again, so I'm hoping that maybe my pace will be a little bit better. Next though, Kimi Antonelli, thanks to Ferrari having to double stack and Hamilton not having the best pit stop, Antonelli is now in P2. So he was in P3 before, he's now P2, so he's looking even better for a podium. He's 13.5 seconds back from Leclerc, but he's over 8 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz. They may have screwed over Albon, but Sainz is now in P3, and the driver who in real life just got a podium at Baku is currently sitting in a podium position here in Singapore. So can Sainz get his first podium for Williams here in Singapore? As like I said, we're P20, and yeah, we do seem to have much better pace on these inters. Loving the inters way more than I'm loving the wets. We've broken away now 1.5 seconds from Doohan and Hulkenberg, who are rather slow behind. We've caught up to this train up ahead, but unfortunately it is just so difficult to overtake. We're now stuck behind this train. Lewis Hamilton has fallen down to P5 after, yeah, some not great pit stops for him, unfortunately. And it's going to get even worse because he goes for a spin and clatters the wall. He's going to break his front wing. The pressure from Max Verstappen behind him has put Hamilton into a spin, and he's going to drop down the order and is probably going to have to come into a pit for a pit stop now, because that is a rather broken front wing. But yeah, just too much power around that corner and into the wall. Very unfortunate for Hamilton. It was looking good for Ferrari. Leclerc's absolutely dominating this race at the moment. But yeah, for Hamilton, he does end up coming to the pits and falls way down the back. As now, Carlos Sainz still currently sitting P3, but not for long. He is very unlucky, sitting in a podium position 5.5 seconds ahead of Norris, and his engine goes up in smoke and he's out. Sainz is out of the Singapore Grand Prix. He was looking at a podium. We were potentially going to have 2 new podium sitters this season, but now it's looking like only one, because it's Kimi Antonelli, who is 16 seconds ahead of, well, now Max Verstappen, who just gets ahead of Lando Norris to get up onto the podium. This has been a great recovery drive for Verstappen. If he can finish on the podium here, that would be huge. Another thing that could be huge is my teammate Paul Aaron, who is looking to score the AI driver's first points for my team. He was sitting in P8. He's just been overtaken by Piastri for P9. But yeah, Paul Aaron currently looking to score points. He is probably going to get demoted down to P10 though, because George Russell is still on a charge. He is very quick. The Mercedes is the quickest car on paper actually at the moment, and Russell is really showing that as he's coming through the order now up to P9. Aaron now down to P10, but let's see if he can score 1 point. However, there are going to be some changes here, because on lap 30, going on to lap 30 of 31, a bunch of drivers coming into the pits to fit dry tyres. Now, the rain stopped a few laps ago. ERS has just been enabled a lap or two ago, and people are now trying to get to the end, or are now changing onto tyres right at the end. But then in front of me, Lance Stroll has gone for a spin, completely stopped Albon. We had to then stop behind him. That was, yeah, Lance Stroll going for a spin. We'll have a look here. He was battling with Alex Albon, defending from him, and yeah, just went for a spin around that tight left-hander into the wall. Very unfortunate for him. I think we'll see it from his onboard perspective as well. Pretty much the exact same thing that happened to Lewis Hamilton. However, Stroll backed into the wall, whereas Hamilton went forwards into the wall. We see myself very close to the back of Albon there, thankfully not making contact. But then Antonelli on the final lap, heading onto the final lap of this race, he now comes into the pits. On the final lap, he doesn't think he can go one more lap on these tyres, and that's going to lose him the podium. Us, well, I was thinking earlier on, a few laps ago before anyone pitted, do I want to come in and try for dry tyres? I ended up sticking it out. Our rear right tyre is going to be at 92%. It actually, no, it goes to 100% as we cross the line. I didn't even notice that until just now. Our tyre went to 100%. We got a puncture as we crossed the line, and that is ridiculous. I cannot believe that. But with that, we've got a point. We got P10.
Charles Leclerc, what a drive, what a victory. He wins.
Well, that's 2 wins in a row for them now. That's really going to help them gain confidence and start to build that momentum that they're really going to be looking for.
And it's time for that special moment for our special 3 today. The podium awaits our top 3 finishers. And that is a fabulous win. And the top step of the podium for Charles Leclerc.
And it's a bit of a different podium. Leclerc wins, that's back-to-back wins now for Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris finally gets another good performance up in P2, but Fernando Alonso ends up P3 in the Aston Martin. That is a very unexpected result, and to be honest, it's completely down to just these drivers didn't pit. They didn't pit at the end for dry tyres. They stuck it out on the intermediates. They were probably just like me, really struggling at the end. That's why some drivers came in. They didn't think they could get to the end. I mean, we literally crossed the line as our tyre got punctured. But we managed to get 1 point by doing that. And Fernando Alonso, he got to the end and he got P3. Antonelli, so unfortunate. He only ended up P4. He was the highest of the drivers that pitted that 3rd time. If he didn't pit, he would have been P2. Maybe his tyres would have gone before the line and he would have fallen back even further, but it is very unfortunate, but it is what it is. Norris does kind of get closer to Verstappen this race. Norris coming P2, Verstappen down in like P6 or 7 or something. Also, despite, being in a podium position before that and actually being ahead of Norris, so bit of a blunder for Verstappen there, I must say, unless he just really used up his tyres. But then O'Sullivan now only 1 point behind Aaron, so both of our drivers very close. And actually Liam Lawson managed to score a great result of, I believe, P6, gets 8 points on the board, which is his first points, and VCarb's first points as well. Isaac Hadjar, now the only driver to not have scored a point so far this season. Sauber are now P11 as Racing Bulls move up to P8. We are P9, and well, Aston Martin jump way ahead of us now, up to 32 points after getting that podium finish. So things starting to spread out a little bit now after, P7 to 9 was super close. It is now fairly close, but a little further spread apart. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.